When it comes to my career as a musician, I've never thought of anything else. I had maybe aspirations to maybe become an automotive engineer. I love to tinker with cars. That's my hobby. But my profession is music. And once I got that into my head, probably around the 6th grade, so what was I, 12 years old? I never realized or thought about failure. I always thought that this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a success. I didn't even have an awareness of what success was. I knew I was just going to pursue it because it's something I had to do. It gave me faith in myself, and it gave me the idea that there was just somewhere a superior being who granted us those talents. And our obligation was to do the best we could with those talents. Why do you love music? I love music because when I play a phrase correctly, when they play a phrase correctly, and the band is together in a tune, and you can see their hearts swell up with pride and the moment. They're in the moment, and life becomes very real. Life becomes very real to those students, and it becomes very real for me because I'm the leader of that circus. My first recollections with music involved watching TV at an early age. So I would say sometime around 1952, 53, I was watching a movie on black and white, little round black and white TV, and a cello was playing a song, da 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 dee da da da, all through the night. And I recall the song, and I remember I had tears in my eyes. And my mom came into the room and said, "What's the matter?" I said, "That's so beautiful." And I think that's when I realized the power of music, just 3 or 4 years old at that time. Then my father played in the Navy band in World War II at Purdue University. He was training at the naval station there, and he played saxophone in a high school band. And he brought that saxophone to the Navy base and played saxophone through his career in the Navy, and then brought that saxophone home, and it sat in the attic while we were little children. And I can remember always going up to the attic and grab that smelly old saxophone, smelled like, horse glue. And I said, "Someday I'm going to play that thing. Someday I'm going to play that thing." And my mom enrolled me. She said, "Oh, you're going to be a great musician someday." And I said, "I don't, whatever." And I started playing the violin to suit my mom in 4th grade. And I was a total failure at playing the violin. I had no grasp of notes. I had no grasp of pitch or rhythms or anything like that. Absolute failure. And in fact, the teacher said, "I think you're the worst one in the class." And I said, "Oh, I have no doubt that I am the worst one. And thank God I can quit now." But the draw of the saxophone sitting in the attic was too strong. So the next year when they were looking for people to play band instruments, I suggested the saxophone. And that started me on a career of the musical life that I've known ever since. I was fortunate that my father knew the local music store owner, Charlie Cattuso. So we went to Cattuso's music store to look for a teacher, and I'm just a little 5th grade punk. And we asked Charlie, said, "Well, who can teach him?" He said, "Well, the guy that's teaching all the beginners is full up. All we have is an advanced instructor. His name is Louis Marini." And my dad said, what about him?" He said, "We'll have to ask him. He only takes advanced students. He doesn't take beginners." Well, he felt sorry for this little Italian kid there, Jimmy Romeo. So he took me under his wing, and within 6 weeks, I was better than anybody else in the junior high school band. So I progressed rapidly under his tutelage, and my dad's encouragement at home. He used to rap me across the back of the head with a newspaper every time I made a mistake. I joke about that, but Sunday edition, no less. But my dad was very insistent that I practice 2 hours a day, even at that early age, 5th grade. 6th grade, I was playing in the high school band. 7th grade, I took up the clarinet. 8th grade, I took up the oboe. And through high school, I played the oboe all the way through. And that's what got me my scholarships. I played jazz band, I played alto saxophone, played oboe in the concert band, played clarinet in the woodwind quintet, and sang in the choir, mainly because that's where all the pretty girls were. High school was a very interesting time for me because we were not exactly welcome in the community I grew up in. I won't mention any names, but it was in northeastern Ohio. And the town was primarily, if you had to give an ethnic background, it was probably white European, 98%. And we were the first Italian family to move there. And it was rough for a while. But music was my salvation. Music was my hero. Music was the thing that set me apart from everybody else. And mostly everybody else were athletes. And they were strong athletes. And it was a very prestigious school for athletics and scholarship. I had neither, but I did have music. So I became the star musician for this school. And eventually, the music taught me skills that I could apply to my academics, and eventually became a member of the National Honor Society and one of the counties, Stark County, academic heroes. And in fact, was student of the month in my senior year. So music, the skills, the mind activity needed to play music successfully crossed over into all my academic studies. I have to say that in 6th grade, up until the 6th grade, I was essentially what some people might call a loser. I was at the bottom of the pack. I didn't have very good verbal skills. I didn't have any math skills. I didn't have a good memory for history. And I had just started the saxophone and was improving my mind on a daily basis through music when Mrs. May, my 6th grade teacher, for some reason put me under her wing and became my mentor and bragged about me to everybody. I've got this little 6th grade kid. He's so good in music. And everybody took notice because Mrs. May first took notice. So I'm very thankful for Mrs. May, and of course my saxophone teacher, Louis Marini, and then my junior high school band director, Al Vinci, the director, Marge Henke, of the symphony, the youth symphony in the town that I was born and raised in. She really took me under her wing, and we played a lot of great orchestral music. And of course, I went off to college and got scholarships to virtually every place I applied. Everybody wanted a good oboe player. And in those days, I was a pretty good little oboe player. And I could play clarinet, and I could play jazz, and I could play saxophone. So I was attractive to a number of colleges and ended up at Kent State University, even though I had a scholarship to Eastman and some other prestigious schools. I went to Kent State University. My mom got sick. My dad couldn't afford to send me out of state. So I went to Kent and had a great education there, great oboe player. I studied with the oboist in the Cleveland Orchestra, John Mack, and was looking forward to a career in music, playing music in a major symphony orchestra by the time I was 30. I had written down all these goals when I was still in high school. Probably the most memorable experience I've had as a performing musician was premiering a saxophone concerto written for me by our faculty member here, Igor Kornichuk. And it was premiered at Lincoln Center, Gerard Schwartz and the New York Chamber Orchestra. I was a soloist, and we did a concert together. We made a record together. That was a pretty amazing experience. Going to New York, playing in Lincoln Center. The school I was supposed to go to was right across the street, Juilliard, and here I was playing a solo premiere in the very facility they all dream about. And I was just a little boy from San Diego, and that was quite an experience. I would also say that playing at the Montreux Jazz Festival in Montreux, Switzerland 3 times was a pretty amazing experience. In fact, in one of the performances, 1970, we played Montreux, and Art Farmer, great jazz flugelhorn player, was our guest. And on stage, behind stage, going on next, was Miles Davis. And we all said, there's Miles Davis, there's Miles Davis. You know, maybe we can talk to Miles Davis. He wasn't talking to anybody. In fact, he was talking to one of the guys in his band, and he asked him how come he never played some of the old stuff anymore. And he was doing the avant-garde album that he was famous for, the Bitches Brew, and that it eventually became one of the top 5 selling albums of all time, jazz albums. And when asked why he doesn't play the old stuff, he said, I don't play that stuff no more. I can still hear him saying it. But he was quite a character, and a character that I would learn to love in my teaching here at Mesa College in jazz history. I did a lot of shows, and I did mention Frank Gorshin and Danny Thomas and Milton Berle and Avalon and the Temptations I played with 6 or 7 times. I'm on a record with David Sanborn, his Pearls album. There's almost not a performer that I haven't played with. Bob Hope, played with Bob Hope. Not that anybody would remember Bob Hope, but played out here in Los Angeles in the big hall there. Did a world tour with Linda Ronstadt. Let's see, the Four Tops, the Supremes. Did a lot of soul bands because I was a pretty good Barry sax player. None of the new, like I would really love to play with Lady Gaga, but that's probably not going to happen. But I played with a lot of the great rock and roll players, and as a sideman, not as a regular, as a sideman. I thought about that question of who would be the one musician that I would like to hang with. And the first answer I would give would probably be Wolfgang Mozart. Second one would be Duke Ellington. Then probably Louis Armstrong. Then maybe Beethoven. But when I think about those musicians who were extremely dedicated, wonderful musicians, Miles Davis, Charlie Parker. I would love to, you know, Shostakovich. I would love to talk with all of them about anything but music, to see what they think about. But if I had to pick one musician out of history, I would love to talk to King David. Really, I mean, he wrote all the Psalms. He wrote some amazing things. He was a spectacular musician, I imagine. So I would really like to talk to him and ask him, what's this connection between you, music, and God? I became a music teacher because, truth be known, I wanted to get married, and I needed a job that would support a husband and wife, and soon to be my first child. So teaching music, since I had a Bachelor of Science in Education and a Bachelor of Music, I could go either way. I could go professional, and I had an opportunity to go professional. And that would have taken probably 10 years for me to end up in a major symphony orchestra, which was one of the things I wanted to do. But teaching was secondary. but it was a stable job, it was a stable income, it had health insurance, it had a pension, and after a while, after about 4 or 5 years, I realized that the kids had taught me enough that I could probably do this for the rest of my life. The first job that one has in music education, you actually should pay them for the first couple of years because of the things that you'll learn. You'll learn about people, you'll learn about time organization, you'll learn what really matters. And what really matters is what really matters. And I have so many people that get distracted by the little things of life and never get into life. You know, the main thing is to make sure the main thing stays the main thing. And the main thing is to educate these children. I think it's a terrible thing that music is being cut out of the curriculums of schools all the way from kindergarten all the way up through college. And I'll tell you why. It costs money to run a music program, no doubt. But where do you want to spend your money? Do you want to spend your money on metal detectors at the front of the door? Do you want to spend your money on armed guards running up and down your halls at the schools? Do you want to spend your money on more jails and more security and more police? That's your choice. You have to give people a choice in order to express themselves. One of my mottos in my jazz history class is, that which cannot be rationalized by man must be expressed. And we have things in our daily lives that cannot be rationalized. How do you rationalize love? How do you explain the things that you do in the name of love? How do you explain the things you do in the name of prejudice? We have these prejudices that, you know, I don't like short people, I don't like tall people, I don't like dark people, I don't like white people, I don't like this religion, I don't like that religion, I don't like the clothes they wear. There's so many things that we could be prejudiced about. And how do we deal with it? Do we deal with it with a gun? Do we deal with it with a knife? Do we deal with it with violence? Or do we deal with it with music? Music transcends all of those emotions. Music takes us to a place of repose and rest and achievement that we cannot get through violence. Violence is a tool of the ignorant. And musicians are so blessed to be able to play music, to express those emotions that can't be expressed any other way. I've had a number of students do real well professionally. And I'm glad to have said that I started them or guided them in a very important part of their careers, and that was at the beginning. If they're taught well from the beginning, they retain those habits. Now, there's a saying that practice makes perfect. It doesn't. Practice makes habits. Perfect practice makes perfect. So I use that with my students all the time. And some of the beginning students that I had, Brian Levy, for instance. Brian is the head of the music department and teacher of jazz studies now at, I think it's Boston, New England Conservatory of Music. Very prestigious position. And he was one of my first students. David Negretti is in Europe right now playing professionally jazz saxophone. He started out as a flute player, but I gave him the basics. When it comes to successful students that I've taught, while at Mesa College, I think probably one of my most successful was a young man by the name of Leonard Patton. Now, Leonard is internationally well known as an amazingly talented vocalist. He's been on Broadway, he's been to Europe, he's been New York, he's been all over the country, and he plays almost exclusively here in San Diego with Peter Sprague, perhaps one of the world's greatest jazz guitarists. And he sings with Peter, and he's an amazingly inventive vocalist. And the story goes, and I like to tell stories, we were stable mates in the men's room, taking care of business, when I heard this kid sing. And I said, do you mind if I talk to you outside? And he said, no. So we went outside, and I said, listen, you have an absolutely amazing voice. He said, well, thank you. And I said, have you ever thought about doing some jazz? He said, all the time, but nobody will let me do it because they think I should be a classical musician first. I said, listen, I want you to sing with the jazz band. What do you think of that? He said, oh, I love it. He sang with the jazz band, and boom, his career took off. He's been doing nothing but singing jazz ever since. And Leonard, God bless you. You know, I'm really proud of you. So he got his start right here, Mesa College. I became involved with the Kearny Mesa Concert Band 25 years ago, and eventually took over the leadership of the band when the leader at the time, Bob McEwen, decided to do more playing. So he was gallivanting across the country with his Dixieland group, and I ended up being the conductor of the Kearny Mesa Concert Band. And in the beginning, we played many of the pieces that Bob was going to play, and I tried initially to make the Kearny Mesa Concert Band the San Diego Conservatory of Music for adults. That wasn't going to happen. That's when I learned the difference between an amateur musician and a professional. That while I existed in the professional realm and certain things were expected, like being able to read any piece of music cold the first time in rehearsal so that you could play it that evening perfectly, was taken for granted. You didn't get employed as a professional musician unless you could do that. Amateurs don't do that. They take 6 months to learn a piece. And I really realized that the musicians that I was teaching were there because they loved music, because they loved to play, and they weren't going to go home and practice 6 hours a day. And that was fine. When I finally, that concept hit me as director of the Kearny Mesa Concert Band, that's when I started to really enjoy life. Because I realized that they weren't going to be the New York Philharmonic, but they certainly could be a very good Kearny Mesa Concert Band here in San Diego. So I accepted that, and we've had a great run, a great run. When asked about what I think a musician is, I feel a musician is an honest person in that they've dedicated themselves to something that is beyond themselves, that they feel an attraction for, and they admit that honesty, and they work extremely hard at mastering that gift that they've been given, no matter what the financial rewards might be or whatever the personal rewards might be. It's a calling, and an honest person will answer that calling and dedicate their lives to it. I certainly have, and it's really been good to me. I think there's a big difference between a professional musician and an amateur musician. And the difference is that honesty that I mentioned before. But it goes beyond that. The amateur musician has a good time. I remember Jack Nicklaus one time remarking about the amateur golfer who goes out to the golf course, he has a sunny day, he doesn't care if he breaks par too much. You know, if he flubs a shot, so what? Me, it costs $100,000 if I flub a shot. So I'm professional. I practice being a golfer all the time. And a professional musician practices all the time, perfecting their craft. Where an amateur, they've got a job they go to, or and they play pretty well, that's usually good enough for a local band, a local orchestra. And everybody's happy because the amateur is not there for the same reasons the professional musician is there. The professional musician, it's their livelihood. He or she is dedicated to that livelihood because of some kind of inner motivation that goes beyond financial or personal rewards. It goes beyond that. It's something we have to do. We have no choice about it. Whereas an amateur musician, they can take it or leave it. And they can get pretty darn good. But the difference is that an amateur doesn't know what they don't know, and a professional knows what they don't know. And they work at it. Why is it important that amateur musicians have music? Because everybody needs a hobby. Everybody needs something away from the mainstream that they do day in and day out, whether it be, their job, marriage, family, church, other interests. Music is the one thing where they can let go. They can express themselves individually or within a group. And it satisfies a basic need within them that is artistic, that is beyond what they do on a normal basis. It gets them in touch with something greater than themselves. Me, I have to play every note perfectly. Everything has to be absolutely in tune, has to be balanced, has to have blend. It has to be perfect. And most of the time it is. And the amateur musicians, they just love this idea that they are free. I believe that it's really important to support music and support the people that are involved in music, whether it be amateur or professional, by our own example. If we live an honest life and are honest about our music, then others will see that, and we will be a shining star to them so that they know, well, just maybe I can do that too. The question is, would you let your daughter marry a musician? My answer is, that's not my choice. That's totally my daughter's choice. If she asks me for advice, I would certainly give her the advice based upon the individual. Again, if the musician is a true musician, he's honest, and is a good person, they have my blessing. But everybody's got to make their own mistakes and their own achievements. So I would love my daughter as much as I love anything. And I would want her to have a happy and successful life. But she's got to choose that. I have 2 grandchildren, little Tino and little Mikey. And little Tino is 3 years old and already can play the penny whistle. He blows it, he tongues it, he articulates, he's got good rhythm, but his father has to work the keys. And it's just something he does. His mother teaches him Bible verses. He's got them memorized. It's the parents. While the grandfather encourages all of this, it's the parents who are actively and consciously involved in their children's education. And I'm so proud of the parents and the grandchildren they're raising for me. I'm so lucky. So if they go into music, they go into music. What can I tell you? Yeah. I mean, am I going to keep one of them from marrying a musician? Being a parent has many obligations. And I always felt that I lived my musical life very honestly, and that I brought my children to many of the musical events that I participated in my life, whether it be sitting next to me in a show or whether it be helping me to conduct a band concert. And my first son went all the way through high school playing the bass drum. He was a big guy, and boy, he could pound out that beat. And he was a stalwart for that 300-piece marching band. And I'm very proud of him. He went on to become a very successful lawyer in his own right, but music's always been part of his life. But my youngest son, James, is a professional flutist, and he's auditioning for symphony orchestras all across the country. His mom was also a musician. I think it was cast in the stars that he would be the musician and take over. I know of many instances where the parents have influenced the child, and the child takes off where the parents ended. And I expect James to fulfill. I expect, but if it happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, I'm happy for him anyway for trying. But he's going to take that dream I had of playing in a professional symphony orchestra like the Cleveland or New York Phil, and he's going to do that. He's going to do that someday. I just know it, and I think he knows it too. So I'm happy for him, the next generation. And he's got the passion, and he's got the worth ethic, where his dad is kind of, it's time to move on for his dad. He's done it all. He's done all I expected to, and more so. I've done it. I've done so much. I'm so blessed. I've done so much. And so much of it has been really good. And some of it hasn't been so good, but I tell you, the good stuff is amazing. When I think about music and the rough spots in my life, I can give an example of this last could have been tragedy in my life. I had a severe automobile accident, and I was laid up in the hospital in the ICU for 6 days, 7 days, not knowing whether or not I was going to make it. And the music that I have taught, the music that I have shared with the people in this community, in the Mesa College community, in the Kearney Mesa area, and in my Kearney Mesa concert band, they came to my rescue. And I know that the accident I had, if I may say, God sent his angels to watch over me and take care of me, because I lived through the accident. And then I lived through moving out of my house, and with the help of so many people, my angels, they came to my rescue. If I hadn't been their director, I would have never known these people. And through the music, the love I have for music, and the love that I feel that I've transferred to them for music, and the way in which to achieve it, I feel that those angels, my angels, came to my rescue. And I'm forever grateful. God's capacity for love is so far beyond our comprehension of what love is and what it can be, that it's transcendent. It's beyond anything that we could ever imagine. And music is certainly a part of that, his love. And we can express that love in music at the amateur or the professional level. How would I like people to remember me? That's an interesting question. I'm a musician because that's my profession. I'm a professional musician and music teacher. But I tell stories while I teach. And I guarantee you, they may not remember me so much, but they'll certainly remember the stories. So I tell stories because I know someday I'm going to die. But the stories will live on. The stories and the music that we've created together will live on. And that makes me very happy. I have a motto in retirement. And it's, even though I've stopped drinking, and not that I drank before, I drink not at all since the accident, but one of my favorite wines was a wine that came from a vineyard up north called Far Niente. And Far Niente in Italian means it is good to do nothing. And that's what I plan on doing. I'm going to chill out for the next 6 to 7 months and heal. I have some healing to do, physical healing to do, and some physical activity I need to start up again. I believe that's what God has planned for me. He said, you've done 40 years, time to rest now, and I've got some other things in store for you. I haven't revealed them to you yet, but you're going to like them, and we're going to do my will for you one way or the other. We still got some time. We still got some time, and I'm so grateful for that time. So, nothing. I'm going to do nothing. But if I had a memory of, I've had some absolutely incredible memories. And I would say that my achievement could be quantified with this recent accident and the help that I've received since then, when I talked about my angels. But I feel that that was, if I did anything in those people's lives, they responded by helping me in the way in which they could afterwards. When I needed the help, they were there for me. And that's so true of the universe. Everything balances out. You put out good, good comes back. You put out bad, bad comes back. I don't know why people don't understand that basic premise that, you know, if you put out nothing but good's going to come back to you. I really believe that. But if I had to talk about anything culturally, one of my greatest achievements was a young man who came into my classroom on the first day and announced to the entire class of 75, "I hate white people." I said, well, this is going to be very interesting then, okay? Why don't you just sit down and we'll talk about it after class. So we talked about it. By the end of the semester, this young man was calling me coach. And I think that was a terrific achievement. When I have students of color tell me that they can't believe a white guy knows anything about people of color, and by the end of the semester, they understand my love of Louis Armstrong and Miles Davis and Charlie Parker and all those great musicians, and the love they had for the music transcends any cultural differences. The music transcends any ethnic differences or any color differences. You know, don't think about what color we are. Don't think about what nationality we are, what religion we are. Think about the music. If you can get the music, it doesn't matter, you know? Charlie Parker once said, man, if you haven't lived it, it ain't going to come out the end of your horn. And it's been coming out the end of my horn for 40 years. Or my mouth. So that's what I would say.
But what,
Okay.
what do you really feel about music?
Yeah. How do I really feel? It's my life. I mean, and now's a heck of a time to ask me. Why don't you ask me when I was 18? So I can make some choices.
But you still got the girl.
I still got the girl.
There you go.
Angela's my girl, and she's coming back. Yeah.